This video was sponsored by Cioppettini, software for services. Learn more about what Cioppettini can do for your business and sign up for a free trial at cioppettini.com. Hi, this is Frank with Electric City Entertainment. Today we're going to do another episode of a Let's Read. If you're new here, a Let's Read is where we pick a piece of literature, something weird or quirky from history. We read it over together so you don't have to read it yourself. We do a little bit more commentary. This is, more relaxed than doing an audiobook reading. It's kind of like a Let's Play, but for reading. Thanks for coming. Today we're going to be talking about Phrenology Simplified. If you don't know what phrenology it is an old pseudoscientific practice that was used by medicine men and other quacks to try and determine things about a person just based on the shape of their skull, the ridges on their skull. They would measure different parts, look up charts about it. It's very interesting. They divide the skull up into lots of little bits and pieces. We're going to be reading a little bit of simplified phrenology because obviously we want it simple, piecemeal, so us as laymen to phrenology, we can understand it. This is an old book. I don't know when it dates back to, but this was actually a real thing. Let's get into it. Once again, before we start, please like and subscribe. We're getting close to getting our 1,000 subscribers and getting monetized, but that's enough begging for me. Let's get started. I'm going to skip over the intro. I haven't read this yet, so hopefully we get some interesting things. The first chapter or section is on domestic propensities, which is, again, not something you hear often, and under it is amativeness. I don't know what amativeness is. So, let's see. Under amativeness, this organ produces... Oh, we picked a good chapter. This organ produces the sexual passion and imparts to its possessor a desire for the happiness of the opposite sex. In society, it does much to promote general kindliness of feeling and urbanity of manners. I've never heard manners called urban in this way, but I want you to have good urbanly manners. Predominant. One in whom this organ predominates will incline to libidinous, 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 licentious, I know that one, and lustful, words I also know. If his moral organs are very, I'm assuming this means moral organs, not his genitalia, but the part of his skull, but who knows, maybe it's referring to his genitalia. If his moral organs are very large, particularly firmness and conscientiousness, yeah, that's got to be the head, then. I don't know genitals that have, I don't know genitals that have conscientiousness. We won't talk about firmness. He may restrain the outward expression of his feeling, but it will nevertheless be powerful and at times overwhelming. If long deprived of the society of the other sex, he will feel lonesome and disconsolate. Well, this sounds like a Chinese fortune cookie. Large. With large... Wait, what was before? Predominant versus large. I don't know the distinction. Look it up. Apparently there's a difference between predominant and large. With large amativeness and adhesiveness, an individual will be exceedingly attached to the society of the other sex, and will be capable of readily ingratiating himself into their favor. If with these organs large and small firmness and conscientiousness, although his love will be intense and fervid, everybody loves a fervid love, yet he will be apt to be capricious and fickle in his attachments. I'm loving the adjectives we're using, not ones I commonly use, but ones I need to definitely start putting into my vocabulary. He will be inclined rather to seek the favor of the sex generally than to limit his regard to a single object. If adhesiveness, inhibitiveness, and... oh, this is a word. Philoprogenitiveness, I think I got that, are large. You'll want to find someone with a large philoprogenitiveness. He will be induced to marry early, but if adhesiveness, philoprogenitiveness, and conscientiousness are small, he will incline to gratify this feeling without reference to the laws of morality. With self-esteem, firmness, and secretiveness large, you have a ridge for secretiveness. That's good to know. Although he may love intensely, he will not allow his passion to predominate over him. If disappointed, he will not be subdued, but manifest to the spectator the appearance of unconcern. With such a combination, he will, in all cases, feel much more intensely than his expressions will imply. If mirthfulness is large, and Sorry, I gotta laugh at mirthfulness. And conscientiousness and ideality small. He will be liable to joke and be fond of licentious allusions. So if he starts making licentious allusions, you should definitely check his mirthfulness and consciousness ridges. Moderate. With a moderate development of this organ, an individual will take great pleasure in the society of ladies whose taste and feelings coincide with his own. Does this mean, I don't know if that means gay. That sounds like that means gay to me. Great pleasure in the society of ladies whose taste and feelings coincide with his own. If his moral sentiments and intellect are large, he will be averse to the society of the merely volatile and frivolous. The ideality of love of approbation are large. He will be attracted by the company of the gay and fashionable. It's our way of sneaking it in there in old-timey society. If ideality and actually, to be fair, this gay just might mean happy, so I don't know if this is actually homosexual gay. This might just mean that this person is lively and gay. I think that's probably what this is meaning. If ideality and intellect generally are large, he will be disgusted with vulgarity and libidinous allusions. His passion will be deep but not lasting. A lot of men have that problem. And with a moderate amount of controlling organs, he can restrain it at will. Also, a lot of people have that problem. Small. When this organ is small, an individual will be distant and reserved towards females. If adhesiveness is large, he may be attached to the society of a select few, but the connection will be of a strictly platonic character. He will be unable to feel the peculiar pleasures of female society. Great way of putting these things. If adhesiveness and we're going to say philoprogenitive a whole lot, so I got to learn how to say it. Philoprogenitiveness are large, he may be disposed to a matrimonial alliance. I don't want to get married, I want to make a matrimonial alliance. Anybody who's a Civ player will love that. They should add that for alliances. But if these organs are small, he will be decidedly averse to such a connection. If one with moral sentiments moderate and destructiveness and self-esteem large, under the influence of the aforementioned combination, were to marry, the connection would be necessarily an unfortunate one. His attachment could not outlive the vicissitudes attending the marriage state, and would inevitably degenerate into disdain and aversion. He would notwithstanding be a fond parent, though his affection would be capricious and ill-regulated. With adhesiveness, conscientiousness, veneration, and benevolence large, an individual's regard for the wife of his choice, if fortunate in his selection, will increase with time, the strength of his superior sentiments more than supplying the want of animal passion. Oh, I just said I didn't want to say this word. The next section, which we will all be happy to see, philoprogenitiveness. And I'm going to probably have to say that 10 more times. The legitimate office of this organ is to produce love for one's own offspring. Okay, that makes sense. Love of your progenitors, or love of your progeny. Knowing it is half the battle, kids. It produces, however, in the breast of its possessor, an affection for children indiscriminately. I'm not going to read subtext into that. For the feeble and helpless, for pets as dogs, horses, cats, etc., and even for inanimate objects. It has an influence in producing general kindliness of disposition. A peculiarity of its character consists in its inspiring its possessor to love with the fondest affection the child that is the most helpless, and even the one that has caused the greatest solicitude, and brought down on its parent the deepest disgrace. I call this almost overly empathetical, or I call it, what is the term I use all the time with my patients? Pathological empathy is one I use. That's kind of what this is sounding like a bit. Predominant. An individual who this organ predominates has a constant hankering for the society of children. Oh, I'm not going to read into that. If without them himself, he views the deprivation as a great misfortune, and if his circumstances are favorable, will be likely to adopt one, for the purpose of exhausting the energy of this feeling upon it. He will be likewise much attached to pets as horses and dogs. Large. Those who possess this organ large betray it in every look and motion while in the company with children. They take the greatest delight in their society and enter into their little troubles and enjoyments with the greatest zeal. They readily enlist their confidence and easily control them. If deprived of their society, they will exhaust their attachment upon some pet animal which they will frequently fondle. We've probably seen pictures of that on Facebook. When combativeness, destructiveness, and philoprogenitiveness are large, an individual will punish children severely when they annoy him, notwithstanding his great affection for them. If self-esteem and combativeness are small, he will be liable to humor his children to allow them improper indulgences. With combativeness and destructiveness large, he will be apt to be capricious in his feelings toward children, at one time humoring them, and another petulant and cross. Moderate. With Philoprogenitiveness moderate. A person will be attached to his own children to a good degree, and may take some interest in others after they begin to lose their infantile character. This feeling, however, will not be durable. He will readily tire of children when they annoy him. The death of a child will be a poignant affliction to him, but it will be soon forgotten. Rough times, rough times. If destructiveness and self-esteem are large, he will be liable to punish them with severity for trivial offenses. Small. With this organ small, a person will be exceedingly annoyed by children. I know someone like this, and she probably will be watching this video, so shout out, let me know in the comments if it's you. If a parent, he will consign the care of them to menials. In all his intercourse with company, he will betray a marked indifference to their society. If ever induced to amuse them, his awkwardness will betray itself to the most casual observer. If benevolence is large, he will take all needful care of them, but if secretness and destructiveness are large, he will delight to torment and tease them. A little sociopathicness. Number 3, adhesiveness. And we're not talking about Gorilla Glue or Crazy Glue or duct tape. This is mental and phrenological adhesiveness. This organ furnishes the instinct of social attachment towards the object of its regard. It excites the purest feelings of affection. It is not satisfied with loving. It must also be loved, someone who is clinginess, and requires for its healthy existence a constant exchange of pure and radiant attention. It diffuses its influence over the whole character of the man and tends to render him kind, amiable, and affectionate. It leads to the love of company and of social intercourse. While it is the germ of many virtues, it is to be feared. In the present state of society, it is likewise productive of many vices. Not explained, but it's a statement, so it must be true. Predominant. With adhesiveness predominant, an individual is preeminently qualified to enjoy friendship, and he will be miserable without it. He will often feel the yearnings of affection coming over him with all the intensity of a passion. His most vivid enjoyments are experienced in the society of his friends. He readily recognizes the existence of similar feeling and blah, 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 blah. Let's skip this. I'm kind of bored by that already. Let's go to inhabitativeness. This organ produces homesickness and causes a feeling of regret to take possession of the mind when leaving a place in which one has long resided. That is very specific for part of the head, just a part that is homesickness. In its first element of patriotism, it produces a desire to locate and reside in a particular place. It adds much to the strength of family attachments. Predominant. One in whom it's not inhibitive like I cannot control myself. It's inhibitive like I want to live in a place. Inhabitable is the part that should be emphasized, not the in part. Predominance. It is preeminently attached to any place in which he has become familiar. It causes much pain to leave it, and he returns to it with eagerness. Okay, whatever. Let's skip that. Concentrativeness. We could probably guess what concentrativeness is. This organ imparts the power of continuity. No, it's not. I guess. Continuity of thought. It's a weird way of saying concentration. It also aids enabling its possessor to continue with the action of the organs generally, so it makes you function your other organs gooder. Let's skip. Combativeness. Ooh, this is under selfish propensities. Checking time. This organ gives the desire to oppose, resist, and overcome. It renders its possessor able to encounter difficulties and to be bold and strenuous in his opposition. If not properly regulated, it will lead to a desire to contradict and quarrel for the sake of opposition. We all know that we've all fought with this person online. It gives vigor and zeal to the pugilist and warrior. Predominant. With this organ predominates, the individual will be bold, disputatious, hate disputatious individuals, and quarrelsome. In an encounter, he will never be satisfied till he has obtained the mastery. He will display great nerve and determination in whatever he undertakes. With self-esteem large and conscientiousness and benevolence small, he will be extremely quarrelsome and overbearing. Destructiveness. I'm skipping along. We'll put the text underneath, but if I'm bored, I'm going to go on. I got ADHD. I ain't got time for that. Destructiveness, number 2. This organ produces the propensity to exterminate and destroy. It incites the murderer to act of crime. It renders its possessor harsh, cruel, and indifferent to the feelings of others, and is an active element in the minds of all warriors, sportsmen, and pugilists. That's a very fine line between warrior and sportsman. Predominant. With destructiveness predominant, an individual will be harsh, cruel, and severe. His language will abound with pungent sarcasms and cutting remarks. Unless his intelligence is small, then he'll just make dumb jokes. With large combativeness, he will prefer arms as a profession. Back when you could just be like, what do you do? I do arms. That's my job. With self-esteem and combativeness both are large. He will be distinguished for his energy and force of character. He will drive through his purpose regardless of opposition. Secretiveness. This organ gives the desire and the talents for concealment. I feel like we're picking things in an RPG. Like, if I'm going through and building the stats of my character, it's like, how much am I going to put under progenitive-ness? 0. I'm going to put all into secretiveness. In its abuse, it renders its possessor averse to and almost incapable of an open-hearted expression. His remarks are sly, evasive, and ambiguous. His actions, he considers, are beyond the reach of human sagacity. That's right. There's no amount of sagacity that will be able to reach my actions. They're far past your ability for sagacity. So don't even try. In its foundation of all hypocrisy, deception, and intrigue, predominant. In one whom secretiveness predominates, will be sly, cunning, and hypocritical. It will be difficult for him to relate to the simplest incident without evasion. If he has an end to bring about, he will seek to do it by some maneuver spelled very weirdly, even when an open course would be more effective. The most trifling actions of his life will be brought about by stratagem. He looks upon others as being actuated by the same motives as himself, and is constantly suspicious and watchful. He will possess great tact, and be readily enabled to discover the motives of others. In conversation, he is apt to hesitate and recommence his sentences, and to answer in an ambiguous manner. To be fair, these don't sound too wrong for certain people, but also, I don't think a part of their skull would tell me this about them. I think I could just talk to the person and be like, yes, you are on a 10 in terms of secretiveness. Not that your head is telling me that. Acquisitiveness. This organ produces the desire to save, to hoard up, and accumulate. As seen on this episode of Hoarders, people with large ridges of acquisitiveness. It induces its possessor to acquire property without reference to its use or his own necessities. It produces the instinct of property. I've never heard property being an instinct, but some people will have the instinct of property. Predominant. A person in whom this organ predominates will be miserly, sordid, and avaricious. Not avaricious, avaricious. He will look upon the accumulation of property as the great end of human existence. If with low education, he will not scruple to steal and pilfer. Alimentiveness. Once again, skipping. This organ imparts the relish for food and drink. Its activity is increased when the person is engaged in eating or drinking. It gets even stronger when eating or drinking. That's a dangerous cycle. Fat bastard. I'm referencing the character, not anybody watching. Sorry if there is anybody out there who is a fat bastard. I didn't mean to call you out. One in whom this organ is predominant will be greatly addicted to the pleasures of the table. I like that. I'm going to use that as a euphemism. It's this guy. Sorry, that guy's a little bit addicted to the pleasures of the table. Will eat voraciously and will consider gustatory enjoyments one of the chief pleasures of existence. We would call this a gourmand, but also this seems like it's insinuating this person is quite large. Large, with adhesiveness and love of approbation large, he will be fond of public dinners and festive occasions. If these be added ideality with a capital I large, so ideality must be a section, the pleasures of these occasions will be heightened in proportion to the splendor of their appearance. If acquisitiveness is large, there will be a continued struggle in his mind, the one wishing to save money and the other to indulge in good living. The contest will be decided by the character of his other developments and his worldly circumstances. If acquisitiveness is small, he will be regardless of the expense of an entertainment, and will gratify his appetite without reference to its cost. With adhesiveness, ideality, and approbativeness large, he will take delight in entertaining his friends in a sumptuous manner. I'm going to put that in my next invitation to a dinner date. I'm going to entertain you in a sumptuous manner. With conscientiousness, veneration, and benevolence large, he will often reproach himself for his extravagance in matters at the table. With mirthfulness, imitation, and secretiveness large, will be excessively fond of telling stories, and in setting the table in a roar. With ideality and love of approbation moderate, and causality and self-esteem large, will be fond of entertaining companies, but will despise ceremony. Skipping on further, we get to moral sentiments, and the first one is conscientiousness, which is a great spelling bee word. This organ views all actions in their moral aspect. It operates as an internal monitor prescribing to its possessor the claims of truth and duty. Its power, however, does not enable it to decide upon what is abstractly just or unjust. This is affected by the character of the other organs with which it is combined. So you gotta check all the organs if you want to know this. That's a fun fact for you all. Don't look at one organ. Doesn't tell you the whole picture. You got to look at all their organs. And by organs, I mean, of course, head ridges. Because why else would that mean anything else? A person with large conscientiousness and smaller propensities will... Large selfishness propensities will consider an action just, which another with the same amount of conscientiousness and smaller propensities will consider unjust. This organ is essential to the formation of a truly philosophic mind, especially in moral investigations. It produces the desire of discovering, the tact of recognizing it when discovered, and that perfect reliance on its invincible supremacy which gives at once dignity and peace to the mind. Veneration. This organ produces the sentiment of reverence without regard the character of the object of which it seeks to exercise. By its influence, man adores God, venerates saints, and respects parents, teachers, and superiors in general. This organ is the source of natural religion, which, of course, is all we know is just an organ, your ability to be religious or to venerate things, or that tendency to worship a superior power which manifests itself in every nation yet discovered. Oh, that's not cringe at all. That's perfectly appropriate to say. Predominant. With veneration predominant, a person, if religious, will be extremely devout and will experience the most profound feelings of awe and respect in contemplating the attributes of the deity. If marvelousness and conscientiousness are large, he will be extremely susceptible of religious impressions and will not fail to become a devout and enthusiastic adherent of the church. I need to look up marvelousness because I'm not skipping that. Hey, here we go. I'm skipping 2 down to marvelousness. This organ produces credulity of mind. It predisposes to believe without sufficient testimony and delights in contemplating the strange and wonderful. So this is like conspiracy theorists or people who just like mystical things. It has been supposed that this organ is given to enable the mind to believe in those passages in Revelation in which supernatural performances are related, and that consequently it increases the zeal and fervor of the devout and religious. Its more general manifestations are to give a fondness for supernatural stories and a love of the strange, the new, and the marvelous, and sometimes leads to the desire to visit mysterious and unfrequented countries. Predominant. With marvelousness predominant, one will be exceedingly credulous and visionary in all his views. He will readily take for granted whatever is told of him of wonderful character. He will disregard simple causes and be disposed to account for anything a little unusual by a forced and unnatural conclusion. So they're gullible, is what we're saying. Let's see. We skipped benevolence. We can do that. Benevolence. This organ produces the desire of happiness in others. Makes people happy. That's boring. Hope is boring. Ideality. This organ imparts a relish and desire for the beautiful, the elevated, and the exquisite. It renders its possessor constantly alive to impressions of beauty and leads to a desire of improvement. Those who possess it large are never satisfied with sober reality. Yeah, we're going to be tripping with this one. But delight to revel in the illusions of fancied existence. I don't know if that means doing drugs or not. Maybe that just means being extravagant. I feel like maybe like just being Lady Gaga-like that's what someone is who is big in ideality. Predominant. Well, let's find out. Predominant. With ideality predominant, one will live in a state of constant illusion. He will be enthusiastic and chimerical in all his views and opinions. His enjoyments will be of the most intense description, and his sufferings of the same character. This sounds more like histrionic to me. If people don't know, histrionic is someone who kind of has extremes of emotion, where everything's either amazing or terrible. They feel big emotion, is the way I explain it. Everything is dialed up to 11 on the emotion scale. Plain matter of fact and sober reality will disgust him. He will never be ever striving after the refined. He will be ever striving after the refined and the ideal. He will be an enthusiastic admirer of poetry and the fine arts and of all objects of taste. Large. With his organ large, one will possess a rich and glowing fancy. I got a big old rich and glowing fancy. And a natural refinement and exquisiteness of taste. With benevolence large, he will be much afflicted at the miseries of mankind and will long for a state of existence where happiness is unalloyed and pleasure interminable. With adhesiveness large, his ideals of friendship will be the most exquisite and refined description. With color, form, and size large, he will be an excellent judge of paintings and will be exceedingly fond of them. It's great when you can tell someone's ability to tell art purely by their head shape. If you check someone's head shape, you go, oh man, he must know fine art because look at those ridges. I can tell. With large language in comparison, will employ many metaphors and figures of speech in his writings and conversations. With self-esteem and comparison large, he will be exceedingly choice in his use of language, and if with this combination language be large and causality small, he will have many more words than ideas, and will converse much more than think. I know a lot of people like that. He will be superficial and showy rather than solid. With amativeness and adhesiveness large, he will be fond of such poetry as is the subject of love and passion. With imitation and marvelousness large, will never relapse in his efforts for improvement. Let's go to imitation. The function of this organ is to enable its possessor to do whatever he has witnessed performed by others. It leads to a desire to represent, mimic, act, copy, and etc. It greatly facilitates the learning of a foreign language, and is an essential ingredient in the character of the skillful mechanic. The gestures of the active are prompted by the same feelings. Okay, we get that. Mirthfulness. Did we do mirthfulness? I don't think so. Let's do mirthfulness. This organ gives the desire and ability to enjoy mirth. Oh, that makes sense. Nothing like making a definition with the word that you're trying to define. Who is someone who is mirthful? Well, obviously, it's someone who has a lot of mirth. Its possessors are apt to consider things in their most humorous light. Okay, maybe it's humor, to the neglect of their more sober characteristics. It is that principle of the mind which enables one to detect what is absurd and ridiculous, and to delight in jokes, fun, and laughter. I guess I've never really thought of mirthfulness or what it means to be mirthful, but I guess that's a good thing. I think many people should be full of mirth. Predominant. With mirthfulness predominant, one has an irresistible tendency to view everything in comical aspect. His most serious meditations are liable to be interrupted by mirthful intrusions, and he will indulge his humorous propensities regardless of consequence. We're going to skip down to observing faculties, and not literally observing faculties. Don't stare at teachers. This is ability to observe. Individuality. The function of this organ is to recognize existences or the identity of substances without reference to their peculiarities. I've got no idea what that means. It has been termed the memory of things. Okay? Its recollective powers are limited to simple details or facts of having predominant form, color, etc. 2. Form. This organ gives the ability to discriminate forms. It aids the artist in prominent development and is indispensable for the skillful mechanic. Predominant. With the form predominant, one never forgets the appearance of anything that has come distinctively under his cognition. So I guess people who just have really good memories. He will readily discriminate the forms of objects at a distance. That's a wrench. And perceive differences and resemblances where many others will not. Can recollect the name of a person by remembering its appearance when written. Will easily detect typographical errors, and with size and individuality large, can read with great facility and correctness, unlike myself. Size. This organ gives the idea of space and the power of judging the relative dimensions of objects. This is completely different than form. Size, form, don't get them confused. It also gives the ability to judge distances of lineal space. Very useful, I guess. Weight. The office of this organ is to impart its possessor the idea of the power of gravity or of mechanical force and resistance. It gives great ability to judge of momentum. It is large in the heads of all those who excel in fencing, boxing, archery, skating. Quoit playing? I don't know if that's quiet playing or if that actually means something. Quoit. If that means something, please someone tell me. I'm hoping that means quiet playing, but it's spelled very, very strange. Predominant. With weight predominant, one will be remarkable for his power in the use of this faculty. The statement says, if you're good at this, you will be good at this, which is a great statement. In performing gymnastic feats and balancing, riding a fractious horse, and in every other existence that requires display of agility, he will be preeminently conspicuous. Color. This organ gives the perception of color, and renders one sensible to their different shades, their harmony and discord. That should be pretty self-explanatory. With this organ predominant, one will notice the color of an object before any other peculiarity pertaining to it. It will take delight in colors, in their arrangement, order, and beauty. Order. This organ imparts the quality of mind which prompts an individual to preserve order and arrangement in his several pursuits and occupations. The peculiar action of the organ is much dependent upon the character of the other developments. Okay, calculation. This organ enables us to form the idea of number, or the plurality of objects. You can count good. It assists in the recollection of dates and quantities. It enables one to readily understand numbers and their combinations. Its activity takes place whenever there is a departure from unity. A large endowment of this organ is not essential for the algebraist and geometrician, which is weird. Like, why would you would think an algebraist or geometrician would be known for their large calculation ridges. Like, I usually, if I'm hiring an algebraist, for example, like on a given Tuesday, I'm going in and I'm like, oh, I need an algebraist as soon as possible. I want to see their calculation ridges. I don't want to just pick one that might have small calculation ridges, because who knows if he's going to be skilled, or I should move on and just try and hire a geometrician and just be like, okay, I'll deal with the geometrician instead of an algebraist, because I'd rather have someone with a big calculation ridge and settle for a geometrician. But that's just me. I mean, I differ from this author, and I think we're just going to have to agree to disagree on our calculation ridge measurement hiring practices. Its functions being limited to arithmetical calculations. One having calculation predominant will reckon in his head, almost, that's the most redneck way of saying it, will reckon in his head almost any arithmetical problem that can be proposed to him. If causality and comparison are large, he will excel in the higher branches of mathematics and possess a great fondness for these studies. Locality. This organ gives the power of noticing and recollecting the peculiar position of objects, and gives a desire for traveling and for the study of geography. It is essential to the scene painter. It strongly aids the power of association. Okay, that's boring. Eventuality. This organ takes cognizance of actions as they exist, and thus observes the phenomena that is constantly taking place throughout nature. It is a principal element in the desire for knowledge, and greatly aids in giving an ability for practical business involving details. With eventuality predominant, one will notice and remember every transaction and occurrence that comes within his observation. This sounds like one that we listened to previously, where it was they're just good at remembering things, but apparently also its own thing. He will have an insatiable thirst for knowledge, and seldom allow any incident to escape his recollection. He will tend much more to facts than to principles, and will be given more to narration than to reasoning, often weakening his arguments by narrating unimportant particulars which have little connection with the point contested. Time. This organ makes you do time good. That's not how they say it, but I'm going to TLDR it for you. Time can tell time. Nothing weird about that. Tune. This organ gives for the taste of music. It makes its possessor take a high degree of pleasure in listening to musical performances. That one's also boring. Language. Language. Language means I'm good at language. We're skipping that. Boom. Let's see. Is there anything else good? Last one. We'll do causality. I'll skip the very, very last one. This is reflective faculties, so your ability to reflect things like a mirror. For causality, this organ observes a relation of cause and effect. It discriminates between actions and causes which produce them. It enables an individual to adopt the requisite means to effect any end. It is the active element in every effort of reflection, and is the grand source of thought and originality of mind. Predominant. With causality predominant, an individual will be distinguished for his proneness to thought and utility to speculate and discuss abstractions. Whatever subject is suggested or point discussed, he will be liable to inquire for reasons and causes. He will be given much more to reflection than observation. So I guess they'll look for what is the meaning of this, what are the causes. I'm going to stop here. We jumped around through most of this. There's a lot more. I will put the link in. If you want to learn more about where these ridges are, there's lots of charts that you can Google. If you look like Phrenology charts, they'll have listing the different areas. Compare them to yourselves. Do these seem accurate? Do they seem like you are mirthful when you're really not mirthful? I'd like to know in the comments. Once again, thank you. If you stayed to the end, thank you so much. You are a god among men. We will be back. If you like more of these or you want to see any suggestions, let us know in the comments. We always take a look out for them, and it helps us just make better content, which is really what we want, and probably what you guys want as well, right? No one's sitting there wanting bad, mediocre, boring content, nor do I want to produce it. So thank you again, and this has been Frank with Electric City Entertainment, signing off.